Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Allegations of toxic work culture have been making headlines in the UK recently. Think high-profile institutions like McDonald's UK and Ireland, insurance exchange Lloyd's of London, hedge funds, OD Asset Management, and prestigious real estate firm Savills.
In fact, figures from the Office for National Statistics show more than a quarter of sexual harassment cases take place in the workplace. This week on In the City, we're unpacking a Bloomberg investigation into allegations of workplace misconduct at the real estate agency Foxtons.
Current and former Foxton employees have told Bloomberg about groping, sexually explicit comments, offensive language, and drink driving at work. They described senior staff who ignored inappropriate behavior or were complicit. We'll explore the implications for Foxtons as an institution and what it can tell us about the wider industry. I'm Francine Lacqua.
And I'm Allegra Stratton.
And with us in the studio, Damian Shepherd, our reporter covering residential real estate. Damian, thank you so much for coming in. Now, this is our big take. You spent months into the investigations. How did it actually start?
Yes, I'll have to take you back about 6 months to the beginning of this one.
It's a long one, Damian.
I got a message on LinkedIn from a source who said they had some information for me. Curiously, I went and met them for a coffee, and they shared a series of concerning allegations about their time at Foxtons. From there, I embarked on a mission to meet with as many current and former Foxtons employees as possible to understand their experiences of working at one of London's biggest estate agencies. And concerningly, a lot of themes have come up throughout those conversations which have hinted at allegations of sexual harassment, racism, bullying, anti-Semitism, and general concerning workplace culture within the company.
What did you actually uncover?
So, according to my sources, one of the main environments for this type of behaviour within Foxtons was their Friday meetings, where lots of people from different offices would gather in one central London office to have their deals read out to the rest of the company to see how their performance was. Now, my sources say that historically these meetings had booze laid out everywhere. People would be sipping on beers, wine throughout. And they would often be the starting point for incidents of sexual harassment and the other allegations we've spoken about in the story, my sources tell me. And again, these people who are making these allegations, very young, fresh into the industry, and if they're at this Friday meeting having their performance read out and then being subject to this type of behaviour, then it feels very concerning for the future of the industry. The reason why, from an overarching point of view, that's so concerning is that the real estate industry has been known for having a slightly checkered reputation over the past decade. There have been a few scandals. One of our own investigations a few years ago revealed some concerning workplace culture points at Savills plc, one of Foxtons' big rivals in London. So there's a big overarching theme here that shows that all of this behaviour is not great for the industry and the people involved.
So looking at that historic Bloomberg investigation with Savills, you don't think that it seemed like the industry had learned anything?
I think if you look at the investigation related to Foxtons, it seems like some of the themes within that Savills story are still being replicated. The Savills story was published a couple of years ago. This reporting refers to the time up until the end of last year. So from that point of view, it looks like the industry's got a long way to go to shake off this reputation at a time when it's, promising to change.
How easy was it to get some of those younger victims to talk?
It was certainly challenging. There needed to be a level of trust built from the word go. So a lot of these people I approached through LinkedIn. Further down the investigation, people would speak to each other about the fact they'd spoken to me, and I would have some people get in touch with me too.
Do they still work for Foxtons?
So it was a mixture of former employees and current employees. Everyone I spoke to has worked there within the last 4 or 5 years. So this is all relatively recent. A big theme within the story is the fact that towards the end of 2022, a new CEO came in, Guy Gittins. He worked for the company, began his career there, in fact, in the 2000s. And he came back in while the company was struggling, underperforming compared to other companies in the sector. And he vowed to kind of bring back this old Foxtons culture from his time when he started at the company. So what that looks like is performance-related trips and getting more branded minis on the road too. I mean, one of the main things that sort of makes people realise what Foxtons is the fact that they've seen their green minis driving all over the capital. The share price has gone through the roof since he's come in. But a big theme of the story was drink driving. One source told me that they were in a crash while they worked there after one of their Friday meetings where all this booze was historically laid out in the room. So
what time of day is the Friday meeting?
So we're talking afternoon time. So people would be cracking open bottles of beer sort of mid-afternoon, my sources tell me. One important thing to note is that Guy Gittins removed alcohol from these meetings in mid-2023, which is a step in the right direction for reducing the level of alcohol consumption, particularly surrounding the drink driving allegations in our report. But my sources tell me that instead people would just bring in their own booze, or managers would tell them to go to the pub before work to have a few. And it's essentially leading to this drinking culture and drink driving culture continuing beyond that.
So there are 50 offices, right, of Foxtons, 50 across London and the rest of the country. How widespread was this?
I met with more than 20 current and former Foxtons employees. They were across over 12 branches, so pretty widespread. We're talking branches up in North London, Central London, the outskirts of London too. At the beginning of the investigation, I wondered whether this was a Central London issue, but as time went on and I spoke to more people, suddenly it became very apparent that this culture had spread across the capital essentially. And one of the most interesting sort of light bulb moments I had throughout this investigation was the distribution of leads. So my sources say that leads, which essentially mean the clients that a negotiator gets who wants to buy, sell, rent or let a property, begin their life in the head office in West London. There's a lead scoring team there who can look at these leads and come to a conclusion as to how strong they are. From there, according to my sources, there is a communication between head office and branch managers about how strong the leads that are coming down to them are. Branch managers can then essentially control the flow of leads to their sales negotiators, lettings negotiators, therefore, in some instances, influencing their performance. Now, what my reporting shows is that people who've spoken out about incidents that have happened to them, incidents that they've witnessed within the office and at company events, have on some occasions seen their flow of leads reduced or cut off completely, eventually being put on performance targets and sometimes being dismissed from the company. So all of this captures the way that, according to my sources, Foxtons are allowing this behaviour to continue in a way that possibly removes people from the company that speak out.
The people you've spoken to at length over the last 6 months, what do they feel is going on? What do they think is the kind of drive for this?
A few sources said to me that Foxtons is a fun place to work, is a social place to work. And that whole culture of the booze, the trips away, getting these deals over the line no matter what, I think is essentially providing an environment for this type of behaviour. And the people involved have described really poor periods of mental health, describing how they no longer want to continue in the industry and they're looking at jobs totally outside of real estate.
If the abuse goes unchecked, I imagine it perpetrates more of it. Do we know about any disciplinary action that they've taken?
Yes, so we do understand that some of the people who the allegations are against are no longer at the company. Some of them still are. So it did feel within my reporting that there were sometimes inconsistencies with the way that complaints were handled. There were some points where HR seemed disinterested in some people's claims. One of the most damning incidents that was shared to me by a source was a woman in her early 20s who was on her first shift at the company. She was out at a viewing with somebody she was shadowing, a male colleague, and upon returning to the office on the walk from the car park, he groped her breasts. She told a manager a few months later, and the manager said, "That's just what he's like."
What's interesting to me is it's not like we haven't had zeitgeist shifting instances of this in other sectors, but it seems to have passed Foxtons by, that they don't seem to have looked at what's happened in Hollywood or what's happened in Westminster and think we should make sure that our structures and our standards and our procedures are watertight.
Damian, what's been the Foxton response to your reporting?
Foxtons have said they're very concerned about the contents of our investigation, but they have insisted that they have the correct policies in place for people to come forward if they do experience this type of behaviour within the office. Now, I would point out that the CEO, Guy Gittins, has implemented some positive changes since coming in as boss. He has removed alcohol from the Friday meetings. Before the Christmas party, HR sent out some anti-sexual harassment training just before the event, which was the first time that had been done, I understand, over the past few years. So it seems like there are some attempts here from the new CEO to clean up some of this behaviour, but ultimately the investigation shows that right up until the end of last year, this stuff was still happening.
There is some evidence that across the city more broadly that there is an increase in certainly reporting of sexual harassment and bullying. And the Treasury Select Committee Chair, Meg Hillier, looked into it last year, and their report suggested possibly the city was going backwards in their report's words. But I think the question is whether it's a function of new legislation and reporting, or whether actually, people are now feeling emboldened to come forward.
Do you think things will change after your investigation comes out?
I'd like to think so, and there are early signs that Gittins is making improvements within the company. That has to be said. And the fact that in their response they said that the things that they'd read in our report were concerning makes me hope that this could be the point of change. And the people that I met with said to me that place is desperate for change. And one of the big reasons why they came and met with the journalist, despite the nerves, was the fact that they wanted to be part of the process to get rid of this behaviour and stop, some very successful people leaving the industry because of the behaviour that's happening against them.
Damian, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's In the City from Bloomberg. This episode was hosted by me, Francine Lacqua, with Allegra Stratton. It was produced by Summer Sadi and Moses Andam, with sound design by Blake Maples. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive producer. Special thanks to Damian Shepherd and Elisa McDonald. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts.